Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of textual study of the Quran. These sessions, as you all know, are primarily based on Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi's tafsir, which is actually an annotated translation of the Quran called Al-Bayan, and it has been authored in 5 volumes by him. And these lectures actually present his viewpoint generally. The translation is the translation of his translation, of course. And the other thing that we need to keep reminding ourselves is that the unique way in which the Farai school approaches the understanding of the Quran, in which each chapter of the Quran begins with Meccan surahs and ends on Medinan surahs. And within each chapter, we find that these surahs, they occur in pairs. So there are 7 chapters in all. And the first chapter starts with Surah Fatiha and ends on Surah Maida, which is the 5th surah. Only the first surah, which is Surah Fatiha, is the Meccan surah. The rest of the 4 surahs, they are Medinan surahs. Surah Fatiha is a unique surah. It does not have a counterpart, but Surah Baqarah and Surah Al-Imran both are counterparts and they form a pair. And this is also evident from the fact that the names of both are Alif Lam Mim. Surah Nisa and Surah Maida, they also form pairs, and the similarity that you can clearly see in their structure is that both end on certain questions that were raised from within the text of the surah. When the content was being revealed, there were some questions in the minds of people, and there were some questions in the environment, in the atmosphere, and some were expressed also. So these questions were taken up one by one and have been answered. So this is the pattern both in Surah Nisa and Surah Maida. So as far as Surah Nisa is concerned, we have discussed this, that it actually ends on verse 126. From 127 onwards, right up to the end of the surah, we have 4 questions that have been taken up one by one, and these questions were raised or were actually found in the environment, in the atmosphere, on the minds of people, and they needed to be addressed. The first question related to the fact that is justice also required when a person marries a woman, not for, the primary reason for which a person marries a woman for companionship, but because he wants to actually give support to the orphans and, of course, to the widow herself. So the question was, what in this case, when he's doing a favor, is it still essential that he pay the dowers of these women? And at the same time, justice, the condition of justice in more than one marriage, which is explicitly stated in the initial part of Surah Nisa, is that to be adhered to or not? So this was the question that was in the environment, and the Quran has taken up this question and then said that yes, you have to pay the dowers, and yes, justice is also important. But one thing that it has clarified here is that the justice that the Quran speaks of in the initial part of Surah Nisa is not related to one's inclination or one's love for a particular wife, and it does not. It's not that the Almighty wants a person to love all his wives equally with the same inclination, because this is something which a person cannot have a control of. So it has been clarified here that loving a wife equally is not required. However, you must deal with the wife or more than one wife equally by giving them the same time, the same appropriate maintenance allowance, etc. So this has to be that the outward justice must always be adhered to, but the inward inclination towards one particular wife, that is not required. And come what may, you have to pay the dower. The dower is basically an expression of the fact that we intend, or a husband intends, to take up the financial responsibility of the wife, and that is of course the case here as well. So even if they are marrying for the benefit and of course for the support of these orphans, even then they have to pay the dowers to their mothers if they have to make them their wives, and they must not in any way shirk this responsibility. And then it is also stated that at times it does happen that marriage, when it takes place in this situation, the dowers, if they are mutually through mutual consent, if the husband or the wife, they agree to a lesser amount than what was originally agreed, then there is no offense in that case, because now the wife is trying to avoid any issues on the as far as the husband is concerned. And this, of course, nushuz being the fact that he might become disinterested in any way or dilly-dallies in his responsibilities. So if, in such a case, if a wife strikes a compromise by reducing her demand for the meher or the amount, then that is also something that is acceptable. So once this has ended, we now go on to the second question, which basically relates to the hypocrites. And these hypocrites, as we shall see from these verses, they wanted to have their ties with the disbelievers, and they wanted to strike a middle way between Islam and un-Islam, and they wanted their ties with the disbelievers to remain as they are, and at the same time also remain in the folds of Islam. So at times they are addressed in this passage by the word munafiq, which is of course hypocrite, and at times they are addressed as ayyuhallazina amanu. I mean, they are of course claimants to faith, at least from their outward claim. So they are still addressed as believers, and this is also something which we have to understand when we read the Quran, that whenever the Quran says ya ayyuhallazina amanu, which means oh believers, it does not always refer to believers who are diehard, who are austere and staunch believers. It also at times refers to hypocrites, because they at least claim to lay a claim to faith. So even at times when they are addressed with this invocation, or with this title of being believers. So this has to be kept in mind. At not all occasions does Ya ayyuhallazina amanu refer to staunch and austere Muslims. So we now go on to the second question. And this second question, as you can see, starts off with a very strong note. It says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. Believers, adhere to justice, bearing witness to it for God, even if this evidence is against your own selves, your parents, and your kinsfolk. If someone is rich or poor, God only is more worthy that his law be followed. So do not be led by desires by leaving his guidance, lest as a result you swerve from the truth. And remember that if you try to distort what is true and just, or evade it, you shall definitely be punished for it. So وَإِن تَلْوُوا أَوْ تُعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرًا. So as you can clearly see, that what is being said here is that in this matter, whatever the truth is, that has to be adhered to. And again, the slant is towards those hypocrites who wanted their personal ties and personal interests to be safeguarded, because the way that they would have safeguarded was that they maintain their ties with their adversaries, so to speak, the adversaries of the Muslims, and at the same time want to strike a compromise. And they knew that if they would strike this compromise, then their own personal interests would not be compromised. But the Quran says, no, if there is an order that has been given to you and you have to bear witness to the truth, then if it goes against your own selves, if it goes against your own parents, if it goes against your relatives, even then you have to stand and bear witness to the truth. And the truth here is that these disbelievers are enemies of, they have become declared enemies of Islam. And if these hypocrites continue with this attitude of striking ties with them or striking friendships with them, then this is against the attitude of justice that is being prescribed in this verse. So it is said in very, very strong words, Kunu qawwamina bil qist, that you have to bear witness, you have to adhere to justice, bearing witness to it for God, even if this evidence is against yourselves, your parents, and your kinsfolk. If someone is rich or poor, God only is more worthy that his law be followed. So again, this is something of a very strong wording that has to be understood, that rich or poor, it should not be in any way the rich or the poor, and should not be in any way discriminated as far as justice is concerned. Justice has to be implemented equally and have to bear this justice. So not only is this verse related to the times of the Prophet, but also it gives us this very strong universal guidance that justice is something that has to reign supreme, and it has to always stand superior and given preference to all sorts of relations. And even if one has to suffer by bearing witness to justice, then that suffering is something that one must undergo. Because on the one hand is that truth, you're bearing witness for justice, you're bearing witness to the truth, and on the other hand are your own personal vested either interests or gains, or the gains and interests of your relatives and even your parents. So such is the nature of justice, such is the nature of bearing witness to justice, that God wants it to stand supreme above all relations. And not only that, but also that whether a person is rich or poor, this should never figure in the administration of justice. And that is something which is something, of course, that unfortunately in many third world countries we are not able to establish. The rich, they are easily able to evade the law, they hoodwink the law, they bypass the law, and this is not the case with the poor, who are unfortunately caught up in the web, and then they have to go through all sorts of trials and tribulations. So this statement is something that is like an eye-opening statement. It is a very strong statement that justice has to be administered at all levels, regardless of who is in front of you. And then this whole conversation actually continues by taking up another stance, and that is, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu aminu billahi wa rasulihi wal kitab allazi nazzala ala rasulihi wal kitab allazi anzala min qabl wa man yakfur billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir faqad dhalla dhalalan ba'ida. So, believers profess faith in God, in His Messenger, and in the book He has revealed to His Messenger, and also in the book He has revealed earlier. And bear in mind that those who deny God, His angels, His books, His messengers, and coming before Him on the day of resurrection have strayed very far in ever. So once again, it is these very hypocrites that are being addressed. And as you can see, that although they have professed faith, because the words are Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, and in spite of the fact that they still have faith, it is said you profess faith. So in other words, what is being claimed here is that the essence of faith, the reality of faith has eluded them. They are just laying claim to faith by their tongues, by their outward adherence to this. Otherwise, what is required is that you have this essential understanding that laying claim to faith is not enough. You have to lay claim, not only just lay claim, but also have that faith, which is the faith that we call in question faith as regards its essence, as regard its depth, as regard its a real meaning. So they are being told that in spite of laying claim, you must actually profess faith in God, in the last prophet, truly the way it should be done. And not only on the book that has been revealed to Prophet Muhammad, but also to books that have been revealed before him. And then, of course, there is this admonition sounded very clearly that وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِاللَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَكُتُبِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا. That it is said that, bear in mind, those who deny God, His angels, His books, His messengers, and coming before Him on the day of resurrection have strayed very far indeed. And then it is said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ كَفَرُوا ثُمَّ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ كَفَرُوا ثُمَّ ازْدَادُوا كُفْرًا لَمْ يَكُنِ اللَّهُ لِيَغْفِرَ لَهُمْ وَلَا لِيَهْدِيَهُمْ سَبِيلًا بَشِّرِ الْمُنَافِقِينَ بِأَنَّ لَهُمْ عَذَابًا أَلِيمًا الَّذِينَ يَتَّخِذُونَ الْكَافِرِينَ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَيَبْتَغُونَ عِندَهُمُ الْعِزَّةَ فَإِنَّ الْعِزَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا. As for those who embraced faith, then renounced it, then again embraced faith, again renounced it, and continued to grow in this disbelief, God shall neither forgive them nor ever guide them. Give glad tidings to these hypocrites. You see, now the word hypocrite has been mentioned in words. And this also is a style of the Quran in which at times things gradually become evident, but there is an insinuation, a very subtle reference to these things that later become evident. So although the name hypocrite was not taken earlier on, but the traits that were mentioned, they actually just fit on these hypocrites. And now their name has been taken. Bashir al-munafiqina bi anna lahum azaban alima. Give glad tidings to these hypocrites, O Prophet, who make friends with your rejectors, even rejectors, leaving aside the believers, that there is a grievous penalty for them. They seek honor with them. The reality is that all honor lies with God. أَيَبْتَغُونَ عِنْدَهُمُ الْعِزَّةَ فَإِنَّ الْعِزَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا. So, Bashir al-Munafiqina bi anna lahum azabun alima would mean that give glad tidings to these hypocrites, O Prophet, who make friends. Of course, the word make friends uh, with the rejectors, leaving aside the believers, clearly shows that as far as these hypocrites were concerned, they were willing to have those ties with the disbelievers, and they did not want those ties. I mean, they could have easily established these ties with the believers, but they gave preference to the disbelievers, about which is, of course, it is being said that this is not should not happen. And if this is going to happen, then their fate is going to be the same as that of the disbelievers, and they will be facing the grave punishment of God in the hereafter, azaban alima. And this is one of the verses that people often cite in favor of not making friends with non-Muslims, because the words are "Allazina yattakhizul kafirina awliya min dunil mu'minin," who make friends with your rejectors, leaving aside the believers. Again, if you look at the context, this is not talking about all types of disbelievers or all types of kuffar. It's talking about the disbelievers of the times of Prophet Muhammad, who had intentionally denied the truth, who was sitting as very staunch disbelievers, who would not want to budge from their stance, even after they knew that they were not correct. And about these people, it is being said that these hypocrites prefer to befriend them, leaving aside the believers themselves. So they would like to befriend disbelievers instead of the believers. So about such people, it is being said that you have to give them glad tidings. Of course, glad tidings here is a very sarcastic remark. Who can give glad tidings of hellfire? But then this is how the Quran actually at times gives this slant on the whole issue. So they are being told that they should not do so. And if they think that by making this friendship happen, they are going to honor themselves, then this is absolutely incorrect, because all honor lies with God. They seek honor with them. The reality is that all honor lies with God. So this section of verses is continuing, and we are going to take up the same section in our next slide, because that was meant for today actually, and we were covering some of the part that had been left in our previous session. So the part is continuing, and the way it continues here is then said, وَقَدْ نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ أَنْ إِذَا. Remember, the same format is being further pursued, and these hypocrites, they are once again mentioned, although not by name, but through their traits and through their behavior and attitude. So, وَقَدْ نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ أَنْ إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ يُكْفَرُوا بِهَا وَيُسْتَهْزَأُوا بِهَا فَلَا تَقْعُدُوا مَعَهُمْ حَتَّى يَخُوضُوا فِي حَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ إِنَّكُمْ إِذًا مِثْلُهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَامِعُ الْمُنَافِقِينَ وَالْكَافِرِينَ فِي جَهَنَّمَ جَمِيعًا. He has revealed in this very book the instruction that wherever you hear that God's revelations are being rejected and ridiculed, do not sit there with those who ridicule them until they get engaged in some other talk. Otherwise, you too will become like them. It is the verdict of God that He shall gather all such hypocrites and disbelievers at the same place in hell. Again, this is a reference to, of course, a verse in Surah Anam, in which it was instructed that people start baselessly arguing with the verses of God. When this happens, Muslims should not sit with these wrongdoers until they get involved in some other activity. Because if Muslims sit in these gatherings in which God's religion and Sharia are ridiculed, then this shows that they have no sense of honor and dignity left in them. And if a person thinks that being part of such gatherings is a source of honor and respect for him, then this would not only show that he is devoid of any sense of honor, but also devoid of faith. So the hypocrites will meet the same fate as has been destined for people who ridicule religion with whom they sit. So وَقَدْ نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ actually is referring to this very fact, that whenever you feel that God's religion is being ridiculed, then don't sit with them. If you do so, then that is something is going to be on your own stigma on you, and you will be considered among the disbelievers. And about such disbelievers, the Quran says, "Inna Allah jami'ul munafiqina wal kafirina fi jahannama jami'a," that such hypocrites and these disbelievers, God will gather them at the same place in hell. And then it says, "Allazina yatarabbasuna bikum, fa in kana lakum fathu min Allah, qalu alam nakum ma'akum, wa in kana lil kafirina nasib, qalu alam nastahwiz alaykum wa namna'akum min al-mu'minin, fallahu yahkumu baynakum yawm al-qiyamah, wa lan yaj'al Allahu lil kafirina 'ala al-mu'minina sabila." These who await misfortunes to befall you. So remember, it is being talked about such disbelievers and such hypocrites. What is their attitude? That very attitude is now being spelled here. It says that these who await misfortunes to befall you, thus if God grants you a victory, they say, were we not with you? And if your rejectors are victorious, they say, were we not surrounding you, and have we not saved you from the Muslims? So it is God who shall judge between you on the day of judgment, and God has passed the verdict that he shall certainly not let these rejectors find a way against the believers. So this is a typical ploy that they would make, that if at all victory would be granted to the Muslims or the true believers, they would say that, well, we are with you. And if this would not be the case, then they would remark in a rather sarcastic way that, were we not surrounding you, and have we not saved you from the Muslims? So this they would say to the other side. So one sentence they would utter to the Muslims and saying that, well, if you are victorious, then we are with you. But if their rejectors are victorious, then instead of saying something to the Muslims, they would go to the rejectors and tell them that we were with you and we have actually saved you from the Muslims. So it is being said, it is God who shall judge between you on the day of judgment, and God has passed his verdict that he shall certainly not let these rejectors find a way against the believers. However much you might do in this world, but at last in the next world, you shall be taken to task. And then this discussion continues, and as we shall go further ahead, you'll see how critically and how poignantly actually the word munafiqun is pointed out, and their own attitude is discussed. And it is said, "Innal munafiqina yukhadi'una Allah wa huwa khadi'uhum, wa idha qamu ila as-salati qamu kusala yura'una an-nasa wa la yazkuruna Allah illa qalila." These hypocrites seek to deceive God, whereas it is He who has deceived them. You see them, when they get up for prayer, they do so sluggishly, only to show off to people. And they remember God but little. And they remember God but little, only wavering in between, neither here nor there. Because of their sins, the Almighty has led them astray. And he whom God leads astray, you will find no way out for them. So this was a typical thing that they would do. You can see from the Quran that they would try to deceive God. And how would they try to deceive God? By telling them that, well, we are with Muslims. And the fact is that they would only deceive their own selves. So these hypocrites were neither with the Muslims nor with the rejectors, whose cause they were educating. So that is what the Quran says, La ilaha ulai wa la ilaha ulai. Neither are they with the believers nor are they with the rejectors. They have their own agenda. They have their own cause. And when they are with the Muslims, they assure them about their support. And when they are with the rejectors, they assure them that they are backing them. And the fact is that in their hearts is no fondness for either. And if you can look at some of the words which the Quran has used here, like kusala, yura'un, muzabzabin, all these things actually tell them that how clearly they are sluggish, they try to show off, they are dilly-dallying, they are in between, and they don't have they don't side with anyone, and they have their own agenda. And the implication is that these hypocrites are not trying to deceive merely the people of God. They also seek to deceive God himself. As you can see, innal munafiqina yukhadi'una Allah. So the fact is that anyone who tries to deceive God does not deceive God. He only ends up deceiving his own self, because God gives him respite. You see, when God gives you the opportunity to do whatever you like, you make hay, you think that you have succeeded in deceiving God. But this is God's ploy, in which God lets you what you want to do. And the person thinks that he has deceived God, whereas he has been deceived by God actually. So the words وَإِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَالَى, they portray an example of their deception. That when they get up for the prayer, they do so lazily, sluggishly, as if under compulsion. Because if they do not participate in the prayer, their name will be struck off from the register of the Muslims. It is a pretentious prayer. and is meant to show off to the Muslims that they are with them. So in this prayer, they remember God only to the extent a person can who offers the prayer in duress and to just put up a display. And this is obviously a blatant act of deception against God. The Quran says that they have been forsaken by God. So it says, وَمَنْ يُضْلِلِ اللَّهُ فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُ سَبِيلًا, that he who has been led astray by God, who can guide that person? So, I mean, this is something of a very grave nature, that these munafiqun, these hypocrites, they think that they have been able to make their way out. They have been able to succeed in their endeavors, whereas the only thing that has happened is that they have been given the opportunity to do as much as they want to, so that once they get caught, then they will be fully punished for what they are doing. It's not that they are deceiving God, they only end up deceiving by God, and that is what has actually happened. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين أتريدون أن تجعلوا لله عليكم سلطانا مبينا إن المنافقين في الدرك الأسفل من النار ولن تجد لهم نصيرا. Believers, by being misled by them, do not make friends with the disbelievers of the Prophet, leaving aside the Muslims. So now the true believers are being addressed, and they are being told that, like these hypocrites, you should not make friends with the enemies of God and with the enemies of the Prophet of God, and especially if it's not in the interest of the Muslims, and you leave aside them. And then it is said, do you want to give clear evidence to God against your own selves? Which means that if you now side with the disbelievers in spite of knowing their intent, then this would be given an evidence to God to really take them to task. إن المنافقين في الدرك الأسفل من النار ولن تجد لهم نصيرا. You should know that these hypocrites shall be in the lowest level of hell, and you will not find anyone to help them. And then it is said, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا وَأَصْلَحُوا وَاعْتَصَمُوا بِاللَّهِ وَأَخْلَصُوا دِينَهُمْ لِلَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Indeed, those who repent and mend their ways and hold fast to God and are sincere in their obedience to God, it is they who shall be with the believers. And then وَسَوْفَ يُؤْتِ اللَّهُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, and God shall soon richly reward the believers. So again, as you can see, that these hypocrites, they are really dealt with in a very harsh way. And it is said that if they adopt the right attitude, God will duly honor them and give them the reward. But if they are not going to do what is required of them, then they are really going to be punished. And it actually tells us that as far as God is concerned, He is not someone who in any way can be regarded as a person who is not administering justice, especially in this world, when we think that people who are doing bad things and they are not being taken to task, they're not being punished, and when we see the opposite happening, it doesn't mean that any injustice is being done. It only means that God is giving them the opportunity. They have the opportunity once again to either mend themselves or to increase in their deviation. Either way. And that is what has to be understood, and that is one of the very important arguments also against atheism also, because people think that if they are succeeding in this world, even if they are doing wrong, then perhaps their wrong ways are actually being ratified. And this is, of course, not the case. And then it is said, ما يفعل الله بعذابكم إن شكرتم وآمنتم وكان الله شاكرا عليما. Servants of God, if you remain grateful to God and become true believers, why should God want to punish you? God is a great acceptor and knows everything. So again, this is like an assurance that is being sounded to them, that if they remain grateful to Him and be true believers, why should God want to punish you? So in spite of all that has happened, in spite of their bad behavior, still these hypocrites are addressed in a way that God does not want to punish you unless you fall for that, your own selves, unless you yourselves don't realize what you are doing. So if you turn back to God, in shakartum wa amantum, you show gratitude and you profess faith, وَكَانَ اللَّهُ شَاكِرًا عَلِيمًا. God is one who accepts one's gratitude and He knows all. لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم وكان الله سميعا عليما. إن تبدوا خيرا أو تخفوه أو تعفوا عن سوء فإن الله كان عفوا كثيرا. Believers, if these hypocrites inflict harm on you and you want to retaliate, you can do so, because God does not like harsh words except when uttered by an oppressed person, and God hears all and knows all. Now, this is a very important part and a very important confusion also that is being clarified here, that if these hypocrites, they inflict harm on you and you want to retaliate, you can do so. Of course, referring to the fact that if any protest is lodged in a way which is which might be seem unbecoming, even then that is something that you're allowed to do, and because you are being oppressed. So la yuhibbullahu al-jahra bis-su'i min al-qawl will actually mean that if you have been wronged, and as a result of that you say those wrong words that normally you should not say, then that is something God would tolerate. However, if that is not the case, then God will not even like that. So unless a person has been oppressed, any such words are not expected from him. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ سَمِيعًا عَلِيمًا إِن تُبْدُوا خَيْرًا أَوْ تُخْفُوهُ أَوْ تَعْفُوا عَنْ سُوءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَفُوًّا قَدِيرًا. However, instead of this, if you keep doing good openly and secretly, or at least forgive a wrong, then this is better, because God by nature is also forgiving, in spite of being all powerful. Again, in tubdu khairin, instead of doing this, if you keep doing good openly and secretly, or at least forgive a wrong, then this is better. Of course, once again, it's like a inspirational statement, or it's like a motivating statement given to these hypocrites, that in spite of all that what has happened, if you keep on doing good, whether openly or secretly, or at least if you forgive a wrong, then this is better, because God is always there. He is not sitting there to punish you. He will welcome you with open arms. إن الذين يكفرون بالله ورسله ويريدون أن يفرقوا بين الله ورسله ويقولون نؤمن ببعض ونكفر ببعض ويريدون أن يتخذوا بين ذلك سبيلا أولئك هم الكافرون حقا وأعتدنا للكافرين عذابا مهينا. It should, however, remain evident that those who are rejecting God and His messengers and want to discriminate between God and His messengers and say, we shall believe in some but deny others, and want to seek some middle ground or middle way between belief and disbelief, it is only they who are staunch disbelievers. So once again, it is being said that this attitude of the hypocrites in which they would like to differentiate between some prophets of God, and by saying that, well, they believe in some and not believe in other, and they would like to adopt a middle ground, then the Quran says, "Ulaika humul kafiruna hakka." They might consider themselves to be Muslims, but in fact, "Ulaika humul kafiruna hakka." It is only they who are staunch disbelievers. And "Wa'atadna lil kafirina azaban muhina." And for such disbelievers, we have prepared a humiliating punishment. والذين آمنوا بالله ورسله ولم يفرقوا بين أحد منهم أولئك سوف يؤتيهم أجورهم وكان الله غفورا رحيما. So this is the last part, the last verse, which says that, on the other hand, those who are believing in God and His messengers and discriminate against none of them, it is they whom God shall definitely give their reward, and God is forgiving, ever merciful. So once again, as is the case in the Quran, that once the believers or disbelievers are mentioned and their fate is mentioned, they are then given the opposite side also. The opposite situation is also portrayed before them, that on the other hand, people who do not adopt this attitude, and وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, that they profess faith in God and the messenger, and when they do so, they do not differentiate between any of His messengers, then the Quran says they will be given their reward, and وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا, and God is someone who's forgiving and merciful. So on this verse, which is verse 152, ends the answer or the response of God to the second question, or the second issue that had been raised by these hypocrites, and they wanted to have those ties with the disbelievers, and they wanted to strike a middle ground. The Quran says that if you try to strike this middle ground, then this is not a middle ground. In fact, it's like siding with the disbelievers, and you shall be then judged with the disbelievers. And therefore, you have to make up your mind once and for all. And if you do not do so, you still have time. God is not interested in punishing you unless you yourselves would not like to mend your ways. You still have time for that. But if that doesn't happen, then very soon the time will expire. So on this actually ends the response to the second question. We have two more questions that have been raised on the content of the surah, but they will follow, inshallah. In our next session, we'll be discussing them. So, before I start off with the literal and idiomatic translation of the portion that we have studied, if you have any questions, please raise them.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Assalamu alaikum, fellow students. Some house rules. We will, of course, stay within the framework of the textual study until we open the floor towards the end for general questions. So please bear that in mind. Imran, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Sure, thank you. Walaikum assalam. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Shehzad. This 137 ayah, I'm trying to understand that these people, inna ladina amanu thumma kafaru thumma amanu thumma kafaru thumma zdadu, like how do they keep believing and disbelieving? Like what's the explanation? Are they professing it out loud or in their hearts? How are they able to do that?
So, of course, that is something that portrays that attitude of not being certain of what they're doing. They would be at times siding here, at times siding there. But all in all, this would be something that relates to their inner intent. Of course, they would not express it, but it seems that the way it has been said here, that this is like their own mental journey, that they would at times incline to one side, at times incline to the other side. As the Quran has said, La ilaha haulai wa la ilaha haulai, that neither they are with the believers nor they are with the disbelievers. So at times they would side with them, at times they would side with them. But muzabzabina bayna zalik, the Quran says they are just, I mean, they have not made up their minds. So they are just transferring from one to the other, and this is like a constant situation. So it does seem that the Quran has actually portrayed this.
So are they confused if they haven't made up their mind, or they deliberately?
I mean, it's not in the matter of confusion. At times, it's like saying that, well, because we have to strike a compromise, then at times when they think that there should be some leeway given by the believers to the disbelievers, they would talk to them. And when they would see that the believers are being overcome, I mean, their force is being overcome by the disbelievers, they would go to them and say, well, you see, this is what was going to happen, and we were just there to see what's going to happen. We are basically with you. So they were like opportunists. They would just see what the situation is and then mend their ways. And remember, they were not monolithic. I mean, they were all not the same. So some would be confused, others would be deliberate, and still others would think that, well, we will see what's going to happen and then we will make our mind. But what the Quran has said very explicitly here is that they had their own agenda. It's that they were neither with the disbelievers and they were with the rejectors, nor with the non-rejectors. They wanted to pursue a middle path, and the path was that they wanted to still be in the fold of Islam and not be told that they break their ties with the disbelievers, who at that time were acting like enemies of God.
I see. Thank you very much.
So, Dr. Saleem, I have a question. Does this verse kind of even apply to today, when there's so many people who are within the framework of Islam but kind of have a streak of disbelief, almost like a dysregulation about Islam, where they kind of change with how the atmosphere is. If somebody is being a little agnostic, they'll go that route. If somebody...
So, I mean, we have to understand that as far as the Quran is concerned, it is portraying a very specific situation of the times of the Prophet and the attitude of the hypocrites. Today, I mean, we just cannot recognize a hypocrite. I mean, yes, we can at times make a value judgment by what they do, but you see, hypocrisy is basically something that relates to your intent and your inner situation of the heart. In the times of God's prophets, God himself exposes them, and only he could have done so. Even the prophets of God don't know whether a person is from inside the same as he is from outside. I mean, they would go by their outside, of course. We cannot have knowledge of their inside. So it was only God who would give them this information. And as you can see from the Quran itself, that it is like God informing, on the one hand, what's going to happen to the hypocrites if they persist, and on the other hand, the Prophet is also being told that these are the people who are like enemies in your own ranks, and they would like to bring you down. So you have to be aware of them as well. So this is a very fundamental thing that you have raised, that remember that, I mean, this is like a godly disclosure, a divine disclosure being given to us regarding the hypocrites of the Prophet's times. We cannot ever expect this to happen in today's times.
Okay. I have a chat question. What is the reasoning and logic regarding repeating the words, And those who believed then renounced their belief, then again believed, then renounced, then again believed, and again renounced.
So that is precisely what I'm telling you. And just let me see the exact verse once again. Yes. In الذين آمنوا ثم كفروا ثم آمنوا ثم ازدادوا كفرا لم يكن الله ليغفر لهم ولا ليهديهم سبيلا, which actually means that people who continue to do that, they shall never receive the success which God has intended them to be destined for them. So basically, it is the attitude of these hypocrites that is being discussed. Because you see, if you look at the verse which is right next to it, is Bashiril Munafiqina bi anna lahum azaban alima. To these people who are hypocrites, you give them glad tidings of a grave punishment, of a grave torment. So basically, it is the attitude of these hypocrites that is being discussed here. That inwardly, at times, they would incline themselves to one form of faith, and out inwardly, then they would just forsake that and think that there is an opportunity for them to go to the other side. So basically, it is their own personal conviction which would be there at times, and then they would lose that conviction. And the Quran is portraying that the inner state of indecisiveness that they would go through in such a situation.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Salman Aziz, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Sir, in ayat number 140, it was told that Muslims should not be sitting in the gathering where things are being talked against Islam.
Right.
So, does it is valid for today also? And what about responding to such things in today's aspect? People who react to blasphemy at time quote such things maybe in their favor. Could you please guide this in this regard?
You see, I mean, this for today, I mean, you have to understand that that was a time in which the hypocrites were being given this opportunity, and they were being told that they should make up their mind either to side with the believers or with the disbelievers. They cannot sit in between. So this is a very particular sort of a situation which is given. Yes, in today's times, actually, it also gives us a guideline, and that guideline is that yes, when Islam is being ridiculed, and you think that ridicule is something that is going to be, something which is going to cause the thing to happen in which you yourself feel that ridicule is going to affect you in such a way that you feel that the beliefs that you follow, they would be cruelly dissected and made fun of, and that's going to affect your psyche as well. So yes, that is something that you should not do. But you see, there are other situations also, because we are not sitting exactly in the same situation as was the case in which these verses were being revealed, because that was a particular case or a particular test that was being given to us, through which the Almighty was trying to plead his case, in the sense that he wanted people to realize that the honor that they gain, because they think that by sitting with these people, they'll be honorable. And if you look at the word, it says يَبْتَغُونَ عِنْدَهُمُ الْعِزَّةِ, that you sit with them because you think it's honorable for you to sit with them. فَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ جَمِيعًا. This honor actually lies with God. It does not lie with these people. So that is the situation, that when you go there and you think that you're probably trying to be more honorable or gain respect when you sit with them, then God says that this respect is not something going to happen. It is in fact something totally opposite. But today, I can see that there are situations in which, at times, if you think that religion is being ridiculed, it is being made fun of, but you still sit there, because at times when you leave such a situation, it might be disrespectful or it might be against etiquette. And at the same time, you would not like to abandon your ties with such people, because maybe later on you can get a chance to talk to them and not make them realize that you are just abandoning them or forsaking them. So I think that in that situation, your own value judgment would be valid if you think that sitting with them just to remain amongst them and having that feeling given to them that we are still with you, I mean, at least in the sense that we would like to have a talk or a conversation with you, and maybe you can find that opportunity. So just for that reason, if you keep sitting and still remain with them, I do think that this can be considered as a strategy.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Saleem, that was my kind of question, the gentleman who just asked the question right now. You know, there are times when you're sitting in a group of people, and people who appear to be and who are Muslims ask questions that kind of sometimes throw believers off,
Yes.
and kind of that was my question. So, do we just
Yes, that was what I'm saying. Meaning, at times these questions they are meant to make fun of, they ridicule, but I mean, not all the people present are of the same. So there might be other silent viewers for them, if you maybe choose to remain silent at that time and maybe later on guide them, or maybe even utter your remarks in which you can maybe give your own input. So you see, it is all situational. So today we cannot exactly apply this directive in our own gatherings, in our own assemblies, because in that case there was a specific target that was being set, that ultimately these hypocrites have to be expunged from the Muslim group, and they have to stand clear either with them or without them, because God is going to pronounce His verdict regarding the disbelievers. And if they persist with the disbelievers, then the verdict of punishment shall be given to them as well. So because that has a very specific nuance, we cannot, I mean, extrapolate or by analogy say that it is exactly similar. So I think that you have to trust your own gut feeling in such situations today. At times, sitting with them and going along with them could be a means to actually diverting them maybe later on in life. And at times, when you think it is too much, then yes, you can actually leave that gathering as well. So I would not say that it is incumbent in all circumstances. I would say it's basically something that you should judge and see for your own selves.
Okay, thank you. Imran, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, Dr. Saleem, thank you. I have just a quick question on the 147 ayah, which is ما يفعل الله بأذابكم إن شكرتم وآمنتم. So I know we're translating it as why Allah uh, should punish them if
Mm.
they are grateful and if they're
Mhm.
faithful. So what if we translate ma nafiya, that Allah would not punish them, ma yaf'alullahu bi'adhabikum, if they are thankful and if they believe? Can we, I mean, like, how do you differentiate that if it is this ma istifhamiya or ma nafiya? That's what I was.
It's a very simple thing that you substitute the meaning. If you would like to change the ma to into any other meaning, either the verse will not make sense or it will be against the context. So here, if you look at this context, ma yuf'alullah bi azabikum in shakartum wa amantum would mean that what good is going to come to God? I mean, why would He do that for you if you would like to profess faith and be grateful to Him? So I don't think that there can be any other assignment given to the meaning of ma other than the
Right,
negation here,
you're right. You're right. Yes, because it
other
becomes
than the interrogative.
God
Yeah.
will not forgive you if
Uh,
you, because
you
if
cannot
you're
turn it
thank
into a nafia. You cannot turn it
right,
into a
right.
negative. So it's more of a interrogative thing.
Yes. Thank you. Good.
Salman, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Sir, about the hypocrites that Zikr, Kalila, that thing. So is there some boundary or limit defined what is Kalil and what is Kasir? Because on the lighter side, sir, we are telling our children to pray only 17 rakat a day or 17 rakat in Isha
So,
only.
no. That's something totally different that we are facing today, and that has another context. So, la yaskuruna Allah illa kalila, as has been specified and expressed here as well, is that they would do the bare minimum that could keep them in amongst the ranks of the Muslims. So, I mean, it's like saying that, well, at least that you should put up a display of your own religiosity so that you are not discounted among them. So, la yaskuruna Allah illa kalila only means that as much as is required, the minimum thing that is required, so that they are not considered outside of the Muslims.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Sir, what
Saleem.
is
No
that
more.
minimum? I'm not able to understand. What is the minimum? Sorry to interrupt.
No. The minimum is that, I mean, that has not been quantified. See, for them it is, you see, look at the whole context. It says, Iza kamu ila salate kamu kusala. Muzabzabina bayna zalik, la ilaha ulai wa la ilaha ulai. All these verses say that whenever they get up for the prayer, Iza kamu ila salate kamu kusala, they are sluggish, they are lazy, they are slothful, giving the impression that they are not fully attentive to it. But then they do so, and they might go to the mosque and be the last ones in the congregational prayer, in which they at least join the prayer, for example, but they do it in the last rakat. And then, of course, they would then try their best to still be counted among Muslims, but then the manner in which they would do it would barely be the minimum one. So that is like pointing out that these hypocrites, the way they are acting, the way they are showing themselves to be, don't think that they are in your ranks. They are basically just trying to shift from one position to the other position. So that has a very specific context.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. No more raised hands at this time, so we can continue with the class.
Okay. So now I come to the literal and idiomatic translation of the portion that we have been studying. So we'll start off with verse 135. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist shuhada'a lillahi walau ala anfusikum. So ya ayyuhallazina amanu, this is now a very common phrase that you must have gotten used to. O believers. So literally it would mean, oh those who have professed faith. So those who have professed faith, kunu qawwamin. So adhere to, so kunu kawwamin, kunu would mean become, and kawwamin would mean adhere, bilqist, to justice. So become adherents to justice, that would be a close translation. Shuhada'i lillah, in such a way that you bear witness for God. You bear witness to it. You bear witness to justice for the sake of God. And it's God that inspires you, that you have to bear, to adhere to justice, bearing witness to it for God. And then it says, walau ala anfusikum, wa and law, even if. Ala here actually means against. Anfusikum, your own selves. So even if this is against your own selves, you bear witness to justice, you adhere to justice, bearing witness to God, even if this adherence to justice goes against your own selves. Allah anfusikum, against your own selves. Aw, which is actually said, written as avil walidain because of the joining progression. So against your own selves or against your parents. Wal akrabin, and against your relatives. So you have to adhere to justice, bearing witness to it, even if this act of adherence to justice goes against your own selves, against your own parents, against your own relatives. In yakun ghaniyan. So in yakun ghaniyan means if someone is rich. Someone is rich. Aw, or faqiran, poor. If someone is rich or poor, fallahu, therefore God, awla bihima, is more worthy of both of them, which means that he must be given preference, which means that the law of God must be equal for both the poor and the rich. So in yakun ghaniyan aw faqiran fallahu awla bihima, if a person is rich or poor, it should not matter. Fallahu awla bihima, God is someone who must be given preference to both, referring to the fact that the law of God must be given preference to both, or it must be implemented equally for both. Fala tattabi'ul hawa, fala, fa, therefore, la, not. Tattabi'u, follow. Therefore, not follow. Hawa, your desire or desires. An ta'dilu, so that you can shift from justice. So that you can shift for justice. So do not follow your desires so that you can shift for justice, or lest you shift from justice. Wa, and in, if. Talvu. So talvu means if you distort. Aw, or tu'ridu, you show indifference. So if you distort or show indifference. Fa, therefore, inna, indeed, Allah, God, kana, is bima ta'amalun, what you do, khabira, aware. So if you distort or show indifference to what is true and just, then remember God is someone who knows what you do. Bima ta'amaluna khabira, who is aware of what you do. Ta'amaluna, what you do, khabira, aware. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, exactly the same phrase with which the previous verse also started. Also, O believers, aminu billahi, profess faith in God. Aminu billah, profess faith in God. Wa rusulihi, and in his messengers. So those who believe, profess faith in God and his messengers. Wal kitab, and the book. Allazi, that was. Nazzala, revealed. Nazzala, revealed. Ala, on. Rasulihi, on his messenger. So believe in the book that was revealed to his messenger, referring to the Quran. Wal kitab allazi anzala min qabl, and the book allazi, that was anzala, sent down, min qabl, before. So you believe in the Quran and the book that was sent down before the Quran, of course referring to the Torah, or the book that was revealed to Moses. وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِاللَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ, wa, and man, he, yakfur, rejects, billahi, God. So he who rejects God, wa malaikatihi, and his angels, wa kutubihi and his books, wa rusulihi and his messengers, wal yawmil akhir and the last day, faqad dhalla dhalalan ba'ida, faqad indeed, dhalla led astray, dhalalan ba'ida very far. So he who denies God and his angels and his books and his messengers and the last day, then he has gone very far in his deviation. On the other hand, then, Inna allazina amanu, inna indeed, allazina amanu, those who have professed faith, summa then, kafaru, those who have rejected, summa amanu, and then they again professed faith, summa kafaru, and then they again rejected, summa zdadu kufra, and then they increased in their kufr, summa then, izdadu increase, kufran disbelief, lam not, yakun is Allah God, liyaghfira lahum going to forgive them, wa and la not, liyahdiyahum lead them or guide them, sabila to the right way. So idiomatically it would mean that those who have believed, then disbelieved, then believed, then disbelieved, and then increased in their disbelief, God is not going to forgive them, nor is He going to guide them. Bashir al-munafiqeen, give glad tidings. Bashir means give glad tidings. Al-munafiqeen, the hypocrites. About what? Bi-anna lahum, that for them. Bi-anna lahum, that for them. Azaban alima, a grave punishment or a grievous penalty. Allazina, those who yattakhizuna al-kafirina, those who hold al-kafirina, the disbelievers, awliya, their friends. So literally it means those who hold the disbelievers their friends. Min dunil mu'mineen would mean that they leave aside the mu'mineen. Min dunil mu'mineen, they by leaving aside the mu'mineen, leaving aside the believers, they make friends with the disbelievers. They hold friends or hold friendship ties with them. These are the ones to whom you should give glad tidings. And then it is said, أَيَبْتَغُونَ عِنْدَهُمُ الْعِزَّةِ, do they seek honor? أَيَبْتَغُونَ عِنْدَهُمُ الْعِزَّةِ, do they seek honor with them? Which means that they go to them because they think that's going to be honorable for them. أَيَبْتَغُونَ means find, عِنْدَهُم with them, al-izza, honor or respect. Fa, therefore, inna, indeed, al-izza, respect, lillahi is for God, jamia, all of it. So they think that they seek honor with them. I mean, which is their own misconception, because that honor is not going to be found with them, because all honor and all respect lies for God. Okay, so now we're going to just switch slides. Going on to the next one here, which is our today's lesson. I'm just going to go back. Just remember that the caption at the top, which apparently tells you that it's going on to verse 169, has been erroneously typed. The verses are from 140 to 152. So it's 140 to 152, but they have been erroneously typed as 169. Okay, وَقَدْ نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الْكِتَابِ أَنْ إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ wa, and qad, indeed, nazzala, revealed, alaykum, to you, fil kitab, in the book, an, that, iza, when, sami'tum, you hear, ayatillahi, the ayats of God, the verses of God, yukfaru biha, are being rejected. Yukfaru biha, they are being rejected. The verses of God are being rejected. Wa, and yustahza'u biha, and are made fun of. Fa, therefore, la, not. Taq'udu, sit. Ma'ahum, among them. Hatta, until. Yakhudu, they indulge. Fi, in. Hadithin, conversation. Ghairihi, other than that. So do not sit with them until they indulge in some other conversation. Innakum isam mislukum. So innakum isam muslumukum, that if you do so, then you will be among them. If you do so, izan misluhum, then you will be regarded among them. Inna, indeed, Allah, God, Jamiu, going to gather, al-munafiqeen, the hypocrites, wa, and al-kafirin, the disbelievers, fi, in, jahannama, hell, jamia, together. So indeed, God is going to gather the hypocrites and the disbelievers in hell together, which means that they'll be in the same place. Allazina yatarabbasuna bikum. Now these hypocrites are being further described. Those who, allazina, those who, yatarabbasuna, they wait, bikum, for you. And the implication is that they wait for misfortunes to befall you. Allazina yatarabbasuna bikum, they wait for misfortunes to befall you. Fa in, so fa, therefore, in, if kana is lakum, for you, fathun, victory, minallahi, from God. So if there is victory for God, if there is victory for you from God, qalu, they say, alam nakum ma'akum, were we not with you? Were we not with you? Alam, were not. Nakun, we. Ma'akum, with you. So were we not with you? Wa in kana lil kafirina nasib. Wa, and in, if kana is lil kafirina, for the disbelievers, nasib, their share. And if it is for the disbelievers, and qalu, they would say, alam nastahwiz alaykum. So were we not surrounding you? Nastahwiz means to surround, to embrace. Alaykum, to you. Wa, and namna'kum, we were stopping you. Minal, from al-mu'mineen, the believers. And actually the word namna'kum means we were protecting you from the believers. So in other words, they would say that if your rejectors are victorious, in kana lakum lil kafirina nasib, that is what is being said earlier on. If you look at the previous slide, that wa in kana lil kafirina nasib, in other words, what is being said is that if your rejectors are victorious, in kana lil kafirina nasib, qalu, they would say to them, were we not stopping you, or we were not surrounding you and stopping you from the believers? So they would go to their camp and tell them that we were actually protecting you from the believers. Fa, therefore, Allah, God, yahkumu, decides, bainakum, between you, yawm al-qiyamah, on the day of judgment. So it is God who shall decide between you on the day of judgment. Wa, and lan, certainly not. Yaj'al Allahu, God will make, lil kafirina, for the disbelievers, al mu'minina, regarding the believers, sabila, any way. I mean, this is literally, a translation that is close to the words. But apparently and idiomatically, of course, it would mean that God will not give these disbelievers any way against the believers, which means that they will not succeed against the believers. Inna al-munafiqina yukhadi'un Allah. Inna, indeed, al-munafiqina, these hypocrites, yukhadi'una, try to deceive Allah, God. So indeed, these hypocrites try to deceive God. Wa, and huwa, he referring to God, khadirhum, he in fact deceived them. So they try to deceive God, but it is in fact God who has deceived them. Wa, and iza, when qamu, they stand, ila salati, towards salat, towards the prayer, which means that when they stand up for the prayer, they stand up kusala, they stand up sluggishly. So whenever they stand up for the prayer, they stand up sluggishly. Qamu, stand up, kusala, sluggishly. Yura'un means to boast, to show off, or to just make an outward appearance of things. Yura'un an-nasa, so they try to show off to people. Wala yazkuruna Allah illa qalila. Wa, and la, not. Yazkuruna, they remember. Allah, God. Illa, except. Qalila, a little. So the fact is that they only remember God very little, which means that as much is required that can make them be counted amongst Muslims. Muzabzabeen means they are indecisive. Baina zalik, between these. So they are indecisive between this. La, not. Ila, towards. Haulai, these. So they are neither towards these, wala ila haulai, nor towards those, which means that they are neither with these Muslims nor with these rejectors. Waman, wa, and man, he, yudlilillahu, is led astray by God. Fa, therefore, lan, certainly not. Tajida, you will find, lahu, for him, sabila, any way. So he who has been led away by God, you will not find any way for him, which means that he will not be guided in any way. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, la tattakhizul kafirina awliya'a min dunil mu'minin. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O believers, la not. Tattakhizu, you hold. Al-Kafirin, these disbelievers. Awliya, your friends. You do not hold these disbelievers as your friends. Min dunil mu'mineen, leaving aside. So, min dun means to leave aside. Al-mu'mineen, the believers. So, do not make friends with these disbelievers, leaving aside the believers. Aturiduna, do you want? An, that. Taj'alu, uh, taj'alu lillahi would mean that do you want to make situation, or you can give God that opportunity or that leverage. Alaykum, against you. Sultanan. Sultan means evidence. Mubina means clear. So, what is implied here is that do you want to give a strong testimony against you to God, a very evident testimony against you to God? Taj'alulillah, to make something for you, lillahi, for God, against you. So, literally would mean to make something for you for God which is against you. And what is that against you? Sultan and Mubina, a clear evidence. Inna, indeed, al munafiqeen, the hypocrites, fi, in. So indeed, these hypocrites, dark means stage or level or phase. Asfal means the lowest. So indeed, these hypocrites will be in the lowest level, minan nar, from among the hellfire. From among the hellfire, they'll be amongst its lowest level. Wa, and lan, certainly not. Tajida, you will find. Lahum, for them. Nasira, helper. And you will not find any helper for them. Illa, except. Allazina, those who. Tabu, repent. Except those who repent. Wa, and. Aslahu, they reform themselves. Wa, and. I'tasamu billah. Or if you have to read it jointly, you will say wa'tasamu billah, which means and they hold to God or hold fast to God. Wa, and. Akhlasu. So akhlasu means they are sincere. Akhlasu deenahum lillahi, which means that they show their obedience in a pure way to God. So akhlasu means they are sincere. Deenahum, in their obedience, lillahi, towards God. So you can see the word deen has been translated as obedience. So remember, it's not always that you have to translate it in the form of religion, as the context shows, and the word itself also means obedience. So here, as the word deen actually means obedience. So akhlasu deenahum would mean they have devoted their religion lillahi, for God, or in other words, they only obey God. Fa, therefore, ulaika, they, ma'al mu'mineen, it is they who shall be with the believers. In other words, people who repent, reform, hold fast to God, and are sincere in their obedience to God, it is they who are amongst Muslims or with the Muslims, not the hypocrites. Wa, and. Saufa, soon. Yu'ti, give. Allah, God. Al mu'minina, the believers. Ajran azima, great reward. So very soon God will richly reward the believers. Ma yaf'alullahu bi'azabikum in shakartum wa amantum. Ma would mean what? Yaf'alullahu, God should do bi'azabikum. I mean, what has He got to do in giving you punishment? So what has He got to do in giving you punishment? If shakartum, you profess shukr, you are grateful. Wa, and amantum, you are really good believers. So what would God do? I mean, what should He do? I mean, in other words, why should He do anything? Why should He in any way want to punish you? So ma, of course, here, as we have just discussed, is interrogative, that why should He bring about any azab on you? Why should He punish you if you are grateful to Him and if you profess faith in the true manner it should be professed? Wa, and. Kana, is Allah, God. Shakiran. So shakiran means who accepts shukr. Alima, knowledgeable. And this is something that I've explained also, that you see at times the meaning of the word changes regarding the ascription. For example, if a person is shakir, what would that mean? That he is grateful. But when God is shakir, of course, we cannot say that God is grateful. It means that God accepts those who are grateful. God is an acceptor of gratitude. Similarly, the word taba. which is, of course, the same as tawbah. So when this is used for a human being, it would be that he repented, or that person repented. But when it is said God, inna Allah yatubu alayh, it would mean that God actually relented, or he accepted the tawbah. So we have to make this little understanding that at times the way verbs occur, when they are used for God, they have a specific meaning, and when they are not used for God but for a human being, then they change their meaning. So the word shukr, when used for me or you or anyone, any human being, it will always imply gratitude from us. But when God is called Shakir, it would mean that he is an acceptor of people who show gratitude to him. And Alima, he knows them. La yuhibbullah, la not, yuhibbu likes, Allah God, al-jahr bisu. So al-jahr bisu actually means to use harsh words openly, min al-qawl, from your conversation. So al-jahr bisu actually means to be blatant in your expression, min al-qawl, of your conversation. In other words, God does not like that you express bad words in your conversation, illa man zulim, except the person who has been oppressed. Except the person who has been oppressed, yes, he can utter harsh words. In other words, harsh words should not come out from people's mouths except from the mouth of the person who has been suppressed. Illa man zulim. Wa, and kana is Allah God, Sami'an, listener, Alima, knowledgeable. And God is someone who who hears all and who knows all. In tubdu khairan, in if tubdu, you reveal, khairan, a good, aw, or tukhfuhu, hide it. I mean, which means that if you do something good openly, aw tukhfuhu, or you hide it, aw, or ta'fu an su'in, or you forgive, ta'fu an, forgive, su'an, a bad thing, something which is a vice, or you forgive a vice. Fa, indeed, inna, fa is therefore, inna is indeed, Allah, God, kana is afuwan. So afuwan means who is merciful, who forgives. Qadira, powerful. So whether you do something, I mean, that means that if you keep doing good, if you do something which is good openly, or you hide it, or you forgive a wrong, or you forgive a vice, then remember, God is someone who is forgiving and is all powerful. Inna allazina yakfuruna billahi. Inna, indeed. Allazina, those who yakfuruna, deny. Billahi, God. Those who deny God. Wa rusulihi, and his messengers. Wa, and yuriduna, they want. An, that. Yufarriqu bainallahi, that they differentiate, that they discriminate. Bainallahi, between God. Wa rusulihi, and his messengers. Wa, and yaquluna, they say. Nu'minu biba'd, we profess faith in some. Wa nakfuru, we reject bibad, we profess faith in some and we reject some. So in other words, those who reject God and his messengers, and they want to differentiate between God and his messengers, and they say that we believe in something and we reject something, and yuriduna, they want, an, that, yattakhizu, they adopt, baina zalika, between them, sabila, a way, which means that they would like to adopt a middle way. Ulaika, it is ulaika hum, actually this is like a double stress, it is they who, al kafiruna, disbelievers, hakka, true, it is they who are true disbelievers, people who would like to differentiate between God and his prophets, and who would like to believe in one thing and deny the other thing, and would like to seek a middle ground. The Quran says ulaika humul kafiruna hakka, it is these people who are actually kafirs, it is these people who are actually rejectors. Wa, and a'tadna, we have prepared, lil kafirina, for these disbelievers, azabam muhina, a humiliating, a disgraceful. So muhin means disgraceful, azab, penalty. So we have prepared for these disbelievers a disgraceful penalty. Wa, and allazina, those who amanu, profess faith, billahi, in God, wa, and rusulihi, and his messengers, wa, and lam, not, yufarriqu, differentiate. So those who profess faith in God and his messengers and do not differentiate, baina ahadim minhum, baina, between, ahadim minhum, any of them, they do not differentiate between any of the prophets. Ulaika, it is they. Saufa means soon. Yu'tihim, he will give. Ujurahum, their reward. So those people who profess faith in God and his messengers and do not differentiate between any of these messengers, God will soon give their reward to them. Ulaika sawfa, soon give their reward, yutihim ujurahum, to them. Ujurahum, of course, is the plural of ajr, and ajr is, of course, reward. So ujurahum means their ajr, their reward. Yutihim will give them. God will give them their reward. Wa, and kana is Allah, God. Ghafura, Rahima. Ghafur means forgiving. Rahima means merciful. And indeed, God is forgiving and merciful. So with this, we come to an end to this literal and idiomatic translation of today's content and text. And now you can raise questions that come to your mind.
Thank you for that wonderful explanation. Dr. Saleem, if anybody has questions regarding the passage we just studied, please raise your hand. Amar Rasool, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Ji, Assalamualaikum, Dr. Sahab.
Walaikum
Dr. Sahab, my question is that this verse in this passage, which was talking about the right to use harsh words, that right only exists for people
Right.
who have been persecuted. And so obviously the Quran is talking about religious persecution here, but what kind of harsh words and in what context does Quran feel that these people can use harsh words? Like, for example, if the persecution is of a nature that a state or a ruler is not allowing a group of people to follow their religion freely, and if the persecution is of that level, then how are they going to use harsh words against that ruler?
I mean, it's not just persecution that is being talked about here. Persecution is one thing. So what is being said here is that people who are oppressed in any way, and out of being oppressed because of being so, given this form of humiliation and disgrace, if someone really speaks badly about you, and you're not expected to say yes, if you stay silent, that's the ideal thing. But if you say something bad in return, someone says bad things to you, someone accuses you, someone talks bad about you behind your back, and that comes to your notice. So in normal circumstances, we are not allowed to express our harsh words against people. But God says there's one exception, that if people oppress you in any way, and as a result, out of reaction, you say something bad to these people as your own response, although it's not an ideal thing, but God says that is something which God does not dislike. Yes, it would have been better to have controlled your reaction, but because of the hurt that you felt, that extreme hurt that you felt, you just wanted to vent out your emotions, and you said something bad as a result, then that is not going to be penalized by God. So that is a very huge thing to have been said.
Thank you for that, Doctor. You go on.
Sorry. So, sir, just for further clarification, can this also include, in today's day and age, oppression of a purely political nature? Like, if, for example, the people of a country feel that they have been oppressed by their rulers, and so over decades, if this oppression has gone on, and then eventually the people find a voice and the courage to voice their feelings, and they say that these rulers are corrupt and they are thieves and they are crooks, but then these masses are blamed, that they don't have a good upbringing, or they are misguided, and they are using these sort of like wrong words for their rulers. This particular verse be? Sorry, yes.
So that is a different scenario. You see, when your rulers are corrupt, they're doing something bad, then that has to be investigated. And of course, you can give your verdict if a court announces a decision or a verdict. But here, what is being said here is that if someone does a bad term to you, someone accuses you something of a personal nature that causes a hurt in you. So normally, what we are told is that we should not use harsh words, bad words for other people. But when you have been oppressed, then express, not blaming them in any way. Like, for example, if you call our rulers corrupt or embezzlers, then that is an accusation. That's something else. But if out of hurt we say something in which we express our own venom or our own anger, so it's like an expression of anger. In that expression of anger, maybe harsh words come out of your mouth inadvertently. God says, I'm not going to hold accountable such people. So it's like that, countering that hate. If something bad comes out of your mouth because you've been hurt, because some harm has been inflicted on you, and out of that intense feeling that is boiling up in your own self, if you express that in words, then God says that if you were actually have been hurt, and this is something that you've felt, and these words come out as a natural reaction, then la yuhibbullahu al-jahra, then that is only the thing, that is the only exception in which God can accept harsh words from the mouths of people. So it is basically a vent that you are given. What you are talking about is slightly different. That's a more considered opinion. You're talking about something that have been done, and that should be taken into account elsewhere. But this verse specifically refers to the expression of anger when you're hurt. You're really hurt, and then you say something from your mouth which is harsh, which is stern, which is not warranted. But since you have been oppressed and it has come out of your mouth as a reaction to that oppression, then God says, I'm going to ignore it. Yes, ideally you should not have been uttered those words, but if you do so, then that is not something for which God is going to hold you accountable.
All right,
Thank
sir.
you for
Thank you
that.
very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Imran, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, Dr. Shehzad, just on the same line, what do you think about the unconditional obedience of the not just the elite class, but the rulers that we are told these days that you have to? Thank you.
I could not get your question.
Of
Unconditional obedience to the rulers as what?
of the rulers, yeah, like whether they are following the law or the religion or not, or whether they're oppressors. We are told that some scholars say that there has to be unconditional obedience of the rulers.
Actually, what I don't know what they exactly say, but my understanding is that if that whatever they say, if the rulers are oppressive and they pass a law at the state level, then you should not disobey the law even if you disagree with the law, and you should try your best to change that law, and that is your democratic right. But you should not disobey that law, or else if you want to disobey it, then you should risk yourselves being caught and being punished. So obedience here does not mean in some personal sense. It actually means in the broader sense that if you have rulers who are not good people, who are bad people, and they have enacted laws which might be oppressive or which might go against you, yes, you have a right to refuse to obey those laws. But then that case, that would be a case in which you are accepting a punishment, and that itself is a way of protest. But it should not be the case that you think that in a case in which you think that some sort of bad ruler has been imputed on you or deputed on you, and merely because of that, if the Parliament or a Supreme Council legislates a law, you start disobeying it. So basically, that relates to that collective attitude of obedience to the law.
I see. Okay, so that's the Islamic ruling on that. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. We have a few raised hands, but I wanted to ask you, I think the gentleman here who's raised his hand wants to ask you a general question. We do not have any more raised hands at this time pertinent to the study of today. If anybody has questions regarding, okay, Amar Rasool, please go ahead, unmute your mic and ask your question.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Sahab, this is something that has been repeated in the Quran, according to my understanding, numerous times. But this verse that we should not differentiate between any of these messengers or prophets.
Correct.
Yes. So, Dr. Sahab, my question is that not only all Muslims do differentiate. So, are all of us committing a sin? And secondly, sometimes it seems as if even the Quran is not giving them equal value, like all these prophets are differently abled and differently dear to God, but they are not equal in any way. Thank you.
I think you have to understand that what the Quran actually implies with this discrimination, it actually thinks that it actually means that you hold your prophet superior to other prophets. You think that the prophet that you are following is the real prophet and the rest are inferior in any way, and you don't give them equal respect. So that is what is being implied here, that you discriminate between your own, and this is what has happened actually. So the Jews and the Christians, and if you look at other denominations, they give preference to their own prophet in the sense that they regard other prophets to be inferior and lesser in respect. So on the contrary, the Quran says that every prophet has equal respect. The same respect should be given to Muhammad as to be given to Jesus or Moses or to Noah or to Abraham. So as prophets of God, they hold equal respect. You should not think that our prophet is more superior and the rest are lesser than him in any way. And this is what we Muslims do, as you've rightly pointed out. But the Quran never does so. The Quran says that yes, at times we have given some messengers some specific traits which are superior to other prophets or messengers, but that's just relative superiority. So, for example, the Quran says that we spoke to Moses, and he's the only person to which, only prophet, in fact, to whom we spoke. So that you can say that in that respect, Moses holds a degree of superiority to other prophets in being given that trait, and other prophets were not spoken to, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't mean that you would like to say that, well, some prophet is absolutely superior to all other people. And we also know that once there was a person who spoke of who actually asked the prophet, who's the greatest of all prophets. In fact, he said that, O Prophet, you are the greatest of all prophets. And the Prophet said, no, Zaka Ibrahim. If you would like to call anyone a great prophet, then he is Abraham. And out of his own humility, he did not accept that. So that, of course, is another point. But the Quran that is which is telling us here is that you have to be respectful in all cases. I mean, it's not asking us to follow all the prophets in the same way because we don't have their guidance saved up the way we have the guidance of Prophet Muhammad. But it says that in no way should you respect other prophets lesser than Prophet Muhammad.
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. I do not think we have any questions related to the passage. There's one gentleman who has a short question which is off topic. Can I have him ask you
Yes,
that
please
question?
go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Oh, Abrar, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर। सर
Right.
मेरा क्वेश्चन था कि कुरान में जो कानून विरासत बयान हुआ है वो अमूमी कानून है, वहाँ पर किसी की तखसीस बयान नहीं हुई। लेकिन कुछ रवायतों से हमें मिलता है कि सैयदना अबू बकर सिद्दीक रदियल्लाहु ताला अन्हु इसके अंदर ये तखसीस करते हैं कि अंबिया की विरासत नहीं हुआ करती, और वो इसी रवायत की बुनियाद पर सैयदा फातिमा को जागीर फदक का हिस्सा भी नहीं देते। तो अब मकतबा फराही का तो ये उसूल है ना कि वो हदीस के जरिए दीन में किसी नए चीज का इजाफा नहीं मानते। तो अब जो ये तखसीस सैयदना अबू बकर सिद्दीक बयान कर रहे हैं, तो इसकी कुरान में क्या नस है?
नहीं, देखिए, ये तो तखसीस तो है ही नहीं, ये तो है विरासत छोड़ना। यानी ये तो कुरान में बयान तो नहीं हुआ। अब ये तो आप भी छोड़ सकते हैं किसी के हक में, आप कहेंगे मैंने विरासत लेनी ही नहीं है, इसको तकसीम कर दिया जाए। तो इसमें कोई तखसीस तो हुई नहीं है। तखसीस तो तब हो कि जब असल में आप ये कहें कि ये मेरा हक नहीं था और मैं इसको इस्तेमाल कर रहा हूँ। यहाँ तो मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि हाँ, ये मेरा हक था, मैं इसको इस्तेमाल नहीं कर रहा। तखसीस तो इसको नहीं ना पैदा, ये तो आप सिर्फ अपने राइट को फॉरगो कर रहे हैं। आपको राइट था कि आपको हक था कि आप फलां फलां काम करें, आप कहते हैं मैं अपना हक एक्सरसाइज नहीं कर रहा। तो हज़रत अबू बकर ने सिर्फ ये कहा था कि मैंने पैगंबर से ये सुना है कि वो अपना राइट नहीं लेना चाहते। वो कहते हैं कि हम पैगंबर जो हैं, हम जो मालो मता के लिए ना लेते हैं ना हम इसको छोड़ते हैं, हमारी मालो मता इल्म है, तो हम इसको हम ले नहीं रहे। तो ये इट्स लाइक फॉरगोइंग योर राइट। जब आप अपना राइट को फॉरगो करते हैं तो इससे कोई तखसीस पैदा नहीं होती। ये तो एक सिर्फ कैटेगरी ये बता रही है कि हम अपना राइट को क्लेम नहीं कर रहा। ये ऐसी आप मिसाल लें कि जैसे हो सकता है कि किसी विरासत में बहन भी और भाई भी हों, और कोई बहन ऐसी हो कि जो ज़रूरतमंद हो, तो एक भाई कहे जी कि मैं अपना हिस्सा नहीं क्लेम कर रहा और मैं अपनी बहन को दे रहा हूँ। अब ये लिखे कहने को तो कुरान में नहीं लिखा हुआ, लेकिन यहाँ क्या हो रहा है? यहाँ सिर्फ ये हो रहा है कि वो शख्स कह रहा है कि मैं अपना राइट नहीं ले रहा। तो राइट ना लेना तो एक ऐसी चीज़ है कि जो किसी वक्त भी किसी भी फॉर्म में किया जा सकता है।
जी, बहुत शुक्रिया, जज़ाकल्लाह।
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. I have no more raised hands this time. If anybody has any questions, we have just a couple of minutes. Keep it short, please, Ammar. Please go ahead and mute your mic and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum once again, Dr. Sahab. Dr. Sahab, my question is about this verse in the Quran. This is a general question where Prophet Zakaria is given the good news of having a son while the wife is not able, and he is also very, very old. And so he asks, God for a sign that if you are, going to do this for me, give me a sign. And the Quran says that the sign that is given to him is that he will not speak for 3 days, although he has the ability. So whenever I read this verse in the Quran, I don't understand what the Quran means here. Like, was he muted? Was the ability to speak taken away from him? Or was he given a roza for 3 days that you will not speak for 3 days?
So that is what is actually implied, that you would not be able to speak for 3 days, illa ramza, except through gestures. So this would be like a sign from God that you would not be able to speak except through gestures. And this would actually tell you what has happened and has correctly happened from God.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem.
And if you want
Mansoor?
some more details, you can always look up the tafseers of Ustaz Ghamidi and Ustaz Islahi, because they have explained this in more detail. I've just given you a short answer.
Yes, sir. So my confusion is that how is that a sign for God to give birth whenever He wants to for a person who is very old, and if the wife is barren? Like I didn't understand this. Like how is muting a prophet for 3 days a sign of that?
I mean, it's like a miracle. You see, I mean, God is telling people that, well, something can happen, and if you'd like to see that miracle is going to happen, is that in spite of being able, having the power to speak, you're not going to speak. So that's, if God can take away your speech for some time, how can He not give you the ability to produce children, even if you're not biologically capable of them?
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. Mansoor Ahmed, please keep your question short. We have very limited time, actually. So just go ahead, ask your question.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, मेरा सवाल पिछले क्वेश्चन के फॉलोअप में है। थोड़ा सा एक पॉइंट को मेंशन कर दें कि कुरान में आया है कि उसका तर्जुमा कोई मफहूमन ये है कि अल्लाह कहते हैं कि हमने सुलेमान को दाऊद का वारिस बनाया। तो ये वाली वर्स किस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में थी पिछले क्वेश्चन के साथ, अगर इसको बयान कर दें तो?
ये तो मुझे देखना पड़ेगा, कुरान का कॉन्टेक्स्ट मेरे सामने इस वक्त नहीं है, लेकिन बहरहाल जो अपेरेंटली लगता है वो यही है कि उनको उसके बाद उनका हुकूमत के मामले में या रूलिंग के बारे में उनका जो रूलरशिप होती है, उसके बाद सुलेमान के बाद दाऊद के बाद सुलेमान उनके वारिस हुए। यानी मतलब ये है कि उनको वो जो हुकूमत दी गई थी और जो सारा मामला किया गया था, उनके बाद वो सुलेमान को ट्रांसफ़र हुआ है।
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no more raised hands and we're all out of time. Thank you, Dr. Saleem, for a wonderful discussion. It was truly so enlightening. Thank you for your wisdom, and we will be ending the session. Inshallah, see everyone, see all of you next week, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you.